It's true.
Amen.
Rip that intro there for us, Frenchie.
What's going on, people? Welcome back to Bed Boys, your one-stop shop for all your energy drink reviews and performance talks. I'm Christian,
I'm Brian.
and we are the Bev Boys. Did that guy just walk out?
He did. He wants to slide in.
Oh, there we go. Hey, we got a impromptu special guest. This guy's not new to the show.
Jake's takes live.
Jake's takes where he fails to show up for 4 weeks.
And then comes back a year and a half later.
The demand was low. The demand was low.
Demand was low, supply is low.
I love that.
There's another guest in the room if you'd appear to show up. But what do you got on an energy drink? What do you got on the docket?
So, I took a walk to a somewhat sketchy gas station here in St. Paul. Overall,
I know exactly which one you're talking about.
Yeah, I walked by a BP, and then I went to another one that was like,
It's like a Super America.
yes, it was like kind of like not boarded up, but you know when they have the
Yep.
the metal on the doors, like you can tell that they're like afraid of the
frames, and then on the inside they had like the bulletproof glass turnaround slide.
yeah, like it's like you're going to the bank, like
I've been
between you and the cashier is like a bulletproof window.
I've been to that gas station.
So yeah, I ventured out, but I did find something that I haven't tried before. So this is the C4 Ultimate. So it's 300 mgs of caffeine, heavy hitter, and this is the sour blue Razilla. It's like a Godzilla spin-off flavor. I don't know if you guys have ever seen this.
I think I
Pretty
tried
sick can. Okay. I haven't had this one. I know that they're always coming out with like kind of weird spin-off flavors of this, like for movies. I know they've done like WWE collabs, but I'm a Blue Raz guy, hoping it's a little sour, a little bit sweet, and it's obviously gonna hit you right in the face because it's 300 mgs of caffeine. But yeah, ventured out to that semi-sketchy gas station, picked it up, so hopefully it's worth it. What are you working with there?
just an OG, little cherry limeade ghost. 12-pack right now, $29.99. Gotta have it. It's tried, it's true. It's definitely a top 10 flavor, maybe top 8. I think Harrell's drinking water. Kel's got a peach monster, it looks like at some point, or an orange monster.
Nice.
Guy's quiet. But
let's pop these tops.
Let's start some chops. How do you like it?
Oh, that's nice. That's like trying to think of what candy that tastes like. There's like a blue candy. It's like similar to sour strips a little bit. Maybe a little bit sweeter.
Then it's gone.
It's very good though. Not terrible in the price. $3.59. That's about what you're gonna expect from something like that at a gas station. So I'm happy. I'm happy with it.
Because we got a specific guest with us.
Brian, did your volume just cut out? I can't hear you.
There we go. How's
All
that?
right, now I can hear you.
I was going to say, I think because we have a specific person in the room with us, I think it's a good time to talk about weight room competitions. Baseball specifically has a very unique weight room or strength conditioning style competitions, especially within collegiate. Omaha Challenge, whether it be on that far, way over the top of like, hey, we're planning an entire week of pseudo military-esque or obstacle course kind of shit, or these different like almost like not games, but in a sense a game. And like what's the value of that? Where do we kind of see things really being important, or is it just not important, or is it a great way to just gamify some kind of training and get some kind of stimulus?
You want me to lead, or you want to let the guest lead?
Sure, I can lead. I mean, I think you should always try to make something a competition. I think if you say that you want to train intent, if intent is really what you value in the weight room, which like for with my teams, I would say intent something I value a lot. Then you got to find a way to let athletes compete as often as you possibly can without making it something that puts them at a risk of hindering their actual performance on the field. So like we talked about this at Elon all the time. Like Chris will know as an intern, like rank, record, publish. Like we're always going to put our jump max scores on an iPad that everyone can see. We're always going to continuously talk about who's at the top. We might not talk about who's at the bottom, but we're going to talk about who's at the top. I like all the game stuff. Like we do that plenty of warm ups, plenty of races, plenty of like you and your partner are playing rock paper scissors, and then the winner's taking off and the loser's trying to catch them. Stuff like that. For competition wise, like I think anything for me that we talk about mental toughness. Like people are like, oh, we got to train mental toughness. So like I don't think that you train mental toughness by doing 2 days of something challenging and then reverting back to a standard that doesn't make it challenging. So like we're always going to try to add some level of resiliency, like we call it mental resiliency, by like seeing how far you're willing to go, like some type of ISO competition. Maybe it's a push-up competition, maybe it's split squat competition, maybe it's like a chin over the bar competition. And then we try to like split that into teams, and maybe say, like, oh, we're going to do some type of race and the loser has an additional 30 seconds of a wall sit, but I'm never not going to make the winning team not do something. I think like if you can flip I think Joe Mazzulla with the Celtics does this, like he makes the winners run because he doesn't want you to think that running is a punishment. He wants you to think you being able to run is the reward. Like, if you lose, then you just sit and watch because you're going to be on the bench anyways, and the winners get to play, and so they're going to run like because they're playing in the game. So I never want to take away like if we're going to do a wall sit or we're going to do something like that. Like I'm never going to not make the winning team do something. They just might not get as the fullest extent of it. So,
Right. Yeah. You want that like relationship with training to be like a positive one versus like you lose, you have to do more. Because then people are just going to try to win and like they think, oh, if I win, I'll get out of stuff, which if it motivates you, it motivates you. But obviously it's better to have like a positive training environment where you see that as like something that you get to do rather than like a punishment. So I like that.
Like working in the sports that I work with who don't have the same like football weight room culture, it's like you have to find different ways to make the weight room something that you want to do and you find benefit from it. And so like for me, like all my teams love to compete, they love to win. Well, like I'm going to give you an opportunity to win, but I also know that the competitions we're doing is training. Like that's what it is. Like it's training you to be a better athlete. You think it's competition, but in reality, I mean, it is to some extent. It's also like stuff that's going to have to like actually make you faster, make you stronger, all those things. So you got to mix that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That's probably like one of, not that we can't do that as much here, but that's like probably one of the things I miss the most from, I mean, I think you can't really compare anything to like football culture because it's like obviously it's like one of the most physical sports, like it's different, but like it's kind of the thing that like once you've like worked with it, you're going to compare everything against that because it is so like unique and like gung ho on like physicality competition, like team oriented competition. So I think it's like a good thing to like strive towards. Like Jake said, like not every like the physical culture of baseball or of like a soccer, like in the weight room especially, is much different than football. But there's still ways to like integrate competitions into that. And I think like at the end of the day, like athletes love to compete, and whether it's something that you had planned, I think it's just as useful. Obviously, like a lot of times people have like competitions. All right, every Friday we do our team comp. I think it's almost as valuable to sneak some like unexpected competitions or things in there, like hey, like at the end of a workout on a random Tuesday, because if they're always expecting it, okay, that's cool. Like you can kind of mentally prepare. I don't think and this is where it kind of gets into the nitty gritty of like what do you define as like whatever mental toughness, mental resilience. It's not really training that fully if they're always like prepared for what's coming. Like if you have all week to think about like, okay, I need to like I'm gonna mentally prepare for this, chin up competition versus at the end of a workout on a random Tuesday, we're like, hey, split squat ISO, last man standing, go. You have to flip that switch right away, which I think is a little bit more akin to like the specifics of the actual sport. Like obviously sport's very chaotic and you can't always, control about what's going to happen. You got to be ready to kind of flip that switch whenever. So what are your guys' thoughts on having them planned so the team can kind of prepare versus just kind of throwing a wrench in at like the end of a workout or like the middle of a workout to kind of see how athletes respond?
I can go. Unless you guys don't. I would just say, like, I think what you're talking about would be considered like constraints-led approach. Like the game in and of itself is very variable. Like there's no set way that a play is gonna, like if you run a basketball play 5-on-0, it's never gonna look that way when it's actually 5-on-5. And so like it's the thought process of, well, there is some benefit to training to doing 5-on-0, but also how much better are we actually going to be in the game if we never go 5-on-0? We only go 5-on-5, and you have to problem solve as you go. So, like for me, I think most of the time I'm more on the side of do it randomly because at the end of the day, like, and I know that y'all agree with this, like you're not putting a squat rack at the 50-yard line and playing. Like it just doesn't happen. So, like the sport is the sport, and so you kind of have to add that mix of variability because we're also trying to help them like build think and process as they go, and by throwing random challenges their way, like they're going to be able to mentally get tougher, if you want to call it that, by being able to respond to a stimulus that they weren't prepared for and problem solve through that. That's my take.
There's a couple ways to look at it. One of the big ones is like that I'm kind of just sticking on is like when you randomly throw the wrench in and now you have to compete. You have to see an athlete turn it on and respond to the moment, right? Now, there's the argument that say in football or whatever, or soccer or lacrosse, whatever it is, you have your scouting report, you're preparing for that competition, but it's the old analogy, like everyone's got a game plan until they get punched in the fucking mouth, right? This is a random punch in the mouth during your comforted period of everything is regimented, scheduled, planned and designed for a specific adaptation. And now the coach looks at you and says, actually, we're going to AMRAP this chin up and we're going to go for it. And I want to see who's got the best. Like you're punched in the mouth. How do you respond? So I think that's a really, really good thing when it comes in terms of training the mental edge or that mental performance side of being able to turn it on and compete with each other whether it be a healthy manner, however you want to view it, but like having the ability to turn that on and compete with each other. Number two, I really like the idea of, in the sense, by dropping this into training, you're having the athlete be able to respond to unplanned behaviors or unplanned or chaotic environments to where they have to, because it becomes more regular, it becomes more subconscious. And because they have the ability to flip it on, turn it off, and regulate themselves, their heart rate response, their attitude, their desire, the motivation, the discipline, etc., all the way through, they're able to do that more regularly in a game, which will probably anecdotal evidence, someone who's able to do that is likely more to be a more controlled human being or a controlled athlete within a game type environment and be less volatile in their responses to those unpredicted outcomes that happen. And seeing those problems, they're able to respond more and more. If I laid out a full week of training and said, you're going to compete on Wednesday, you're going to compete on Thursday and on Saturday, right? Now they're just, like you said, they're mentally preparing for those outcomes of like, okay, I'm going to really go hard on these 3 days. But if you have them essentially not on edge, but used to the idea of like at any given point, that coach is going to ask me to compete and win and go for it. The other aspect, like they're going to be trained enough to where they can just turn that on and rip it. Number two, it's more likely that you're going to be a little bit more bought into the training program because you understand that these are all like overarching like systems that are interacting with each other in a complex system versus something very simple of like I only need to turn it on then. Well, if I only need you to turn it on then what are we wasting the other 4 days of training for? You know what I mean? And the mental side, the disciplinary, mental fortitude, resiliency, however, whatever you want to call it. At some point, they are going to have to be able to do this regularly, whether it be in life, in the sport, in training, whatever it is. But if they're dog walking and peeling back, we all know the athlete when we were in college or in high school, whether it was in a track practice or whether it was in football or baseball or basketball, like they dog the whole conditioning set and then they're going to gun that last rep to make it look good. Like, oh, I can finish. And it's like, great, because that's because they knew exactly what was good, what the outcome was going to be, or what the plan was. What would happen if you threw another rep in, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh shit, I got to go again," right? Versus having the intent behind their training, the entirety of it. We're not asking them to do this for 17 hours a day. It's an hour and a half to 2.5 hours of planned activity. So if they're able to just lock in essentially during that moment and be able to go for it with an unpredictable thing that they may encounter, we're able to get more out of the overall, the 3 6 month plan, the macro cycle, the mesocycle.
What do you think is there a fine line between, like, for example, when you run a track practice or whenever any of you guys run like a field session, do you tell the athletes how many like reps, distance, rest times that they're going to do? And do you think there's a benefit to not telling them the total amount of work and just kind of seeing how they react? Because I think there's probably a fine line between that where people will dog it the whole time, but it's also, I don't know. That's what I'm curious about.
I think there is, and I think it's how you approach the athlete, and I think the coach relationship to the athlete matters more than if I was going to blanketly apply that. Like with the track team, like they know, like Monday we had 2 sets of 5 by 200, and they know that it's going to be that tempo day that is a little bit more strength oriented and aerobic based, but like they're not like, oh, if I just make it through, it's because like, no, you need to hit this time. So that's I guess it's a slightly different construct because it's like your time is this. And it's like, they know like going into the session because I've harped on it of like, today can't waste tomorrow because tomorrow is going to be the speed day. And if you go too fast today, we're not going to get the desired output that we want or the systemic response. And then tomorrow is wasted because now I can't risk your injury. So that's a little bit different versus like saying like a field work session. If you tell them, hey, you have 4 sets of 8 at 75-yard tempos, that's when I think you're going to get like the easing up, or like they'll be pissed off and sad during sets 2 and 3, and then 4 they're going to be like it's all good and they're going to look perfect because they know they're about to finish. That's when I would be like, hey, we somehow have to get 52 reps of tempo. How I decide I break that up, that's going to be flavor of the day, or how I see you respond to set 1, set 2. And then you just moderate it because you're going to hit the total volume in the session. Sometimes you're going to have a little bit more acidosis in the legs on maybe this set or this week to week. But in the same sense, like a lot of the times in fields-based sports, like the more I see it, the more I'm like, is a completely aerobic day very necessary? Obviously, like we do want like a low day in order to be able to respond and come back for a high day. But like when you know that like, hey, this is my high volume day. For example, like us on like a Wednesday in the summer, that's our high volume day. We're already hitting sprint volumes as well. We know that that's going to be a higher intensity day, and there's an easy day backed off behind it. Like if I get acidosis in the legs slightly during the aerobic portion, maybe it's still globally aerobic, but it's going to have localized lactic or lactate in the system, depending on how they process the oxygen. So I'm okay with that. Like that's where you're going to see a little bit more of the mental fortitude side of it, because you're like, okay, well, they think, hey, we have 17 reps. These are going to split up into a set of 9 and a set of 8. No, I might just go 12 and then 5. just for the sake of like, I'm going to throw a wrench in because now you have an unpredictability and something you didn't expect, and you have to respond to it. And you have to go through and do the same thing that you were the previous two sets in order to accomplish the goal at hand. And at the very minimum, at like the most minimal sense, they're going to have to learn to equip themselves to handle the task at hand, which I think is more necessary than anything else from like a pseudo skill based portion of that training session. You're developing some kind of skill of being able to have a stress response, not maybe physiologically, but mentally and psychologically to whatever they're encountering.
Do you think that depends on the time of year, like within the training cycle, that you're going to do that more often versus less often?
I would say so, yeah, 100%. Like if you're deep in the off season, you're not necessarily as worried about like the global fatigue and like chronic workloads being a little bit higher. In season or preseason, as you prepare for the first competition, that's when you're like, I got to be far more conscious of this.
Mm.
But even at the same extent, like I've swapped things around in my practice plan going into a day on purpose. Yesterday was a great example. We had handoffs, then some block work, and then we were going to run a more like, speed endurance 2 kind of session, longer reps, a little bit faster. I moved things around. I was like, okay, actually, you're going to go to blocks first. You're going to go rip handoffs, and then we're going to flip flop. Then we're going to go here, and then you're going to hit this piece. Just for the sake of, even in a track meet, you might get a weather delay. You might have an official's delay that something's going wrong. How do you respond to that? Do you let that freak you out? Even then on a smaller scale, they'll get set in the blocks, and I'll stand them back up and have them reset, because that's a thing that will occur at some point during their races in their meet season, that if they don't have the skill set equipped to respond to that moment and that kind of different constraint thrown at them, we could blow the race, and now we only get one opportunity at that. So I want them to be prepared to be able to respond to it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Something that I've like noticed in like my setting is a lot of guys are very routine oriented, especially pitchers. Like it's all about like their routine, and like I think there's a fine line between where like routines are good but can also go too far. Like to me, having a routine and like things you do on a daily basis to like that like help you prepare for whatever it is good. But when the routine becomes a crutch, when you say like, all right, I have to do this hour and a half long routine every day before I can even do anything, like that's, to me, that's almost like a lack of resilience. And I'm not saying like not preparing, like I'm not saying like don't prepare, but you can tell. I think it's like a lot of times you can see like younger guys versus older guys, just people that have been in the game a lot longer. They kind of like know exactly like what they need to do, what time they need to like show up to the field before a game, versus other people. You can kind of tell like they just don't have that down yet. So they're at the field, probably way longer before the game than they need to be, and then they're just kind of like, yeah, they're kind of, for lack of a better word, they're just doing a lot of eye wash. They're just doing a lot of eye wash, and it's
like, I got here too early. What do I do now?
Yeah, and it's like, do you really need to be there 5 hours before a game? Like, yeah. If you're like a starting pitcher, I don't know, maybe, but like, if anything wrinkles your plan, like you're not very resilient, honestly. Like if you can't, I agree. Like there's probably like a quote unquote optimal, routine that you have. That's okay. Maybe that's an hour or an hour and 15 minutes. But what happens when, that gets pushed and you need to get ready in 30 minutes?
Yeah.
If you can't get ready if you can't fast track that process, like you're not as resilient.
There's also like the same argument of like the perfect routine where you're so structured, but then again, you get the wrench into the mix, and all of a sudden you don't know how to respond to that.
Yeah, if you leave no room for variability, it's the opposite of optimal, because it renders you basically ineffective if you can't do that perfect routine.
Yeah, it's the same argument with every person with like, I have this like 12-step morning routine every morning. And if they don't hit that, it's like, well, my day's shot. It's like if you're letting, a face wash or like you brushing your teeth within 15 minutes or going out and seeing the sun within 15 minutes of you waking up, if that is the precursor to how that entire day is going to go, I think number one, you're just a mentally weak individual, and you don't know how to respond to life. But number two, like what happens when you don't have, like you say, you forget one of those things. Like, are
Mm-hmm.
you going to go to bed and restart the entire day? It's the same thing when it comes to like the pregame warm ups or like when they arrive at the facility. All these different things. You have to be okay with variability. If you're consistently inconsistent, you're probably going to be in a good place. That's why you just work in ranges. Hey, I like to get this stuff done. If I don't have this time, I'd like to get this done. Here we go, and
Mm-hmm.
and be able to kind of just move and be adapt. The most adaptable person will win, and we've preached this a ton. And I think we talked about this after our indoor conference recap when I came back from Boston. Of the entire conference flipped out when they realized it was going to get condensed into a 1 day meet, and our entire like I guess pre-meet speech of like is just be the most adaptable athlete. You might not run the best time, but if you're the most adaptable one, you will win because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to be okay and thrive in the chaos of this while everyone else freaks out that they don't have 2.5 hours to hit their full set warm up, etc., and then a cool down and this and that. But if you're okay just being like, okay, I got to go here and I can just adapt and I'll just change a small piece, you're going to be able to thrive. And that's, I think, the biggest thing that like when we talk about doing like a weight room competition, especially being like thrown into a random portion of the training, being adaptable. How adaptable is the athlete, right? We can build a robust athlete, but if they can't adapt to the environment around them, number one, they're gonna have a lot of trouble. We always preach adaptability and perception of the environment when it comes to agility. Why can't we have that as a perception of the environment and adapting to it in just a psychological sense? I think that
Mm-hmm.
often gets overlooked as a portion of training, or it gets thrown so far onto the other end of, hey, we're going to do mat drills. We're going to blow these guys up and it's going to make them tough. It's like, well, no, they're expecting that this is going to happen. And the 2 hour extremely hard workout isn't going to make that, one time, then you go back to your scheduled training that's already now blown up for the week. That's not going to change that. But creating a environment that consistently, I don't want to say like it's consistently changing because you're not rewriting the plan and everything, but you're just messing with constraints around things in order to change a little bit of the perceived stimulus or the perceived psychological adaptation that will allow the athlete to grow and prosper when it comes to competition and probably have a better success rate when things don't go their way.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's equally as important for coaches as it is for athletes too. Like being adaptable. Like for example, I think that's one of the biggest like things that I'm learning this year. Like when we go on the road, like we usually don't have a great weight room setup. It's definitely not ideal, but we have our own space. Like for example, we're in St. Paul this year. We have a room and it was essentially just an empty room. The only equipment we have is what we traveled with. So we traveled with a barbell, a trap bar, weights up to about 315, some power blocks, a couple kettlebells, and a few some bands, a few other miscellaneous things. And it's like we get 3 people in that room and we're at like max capacity, and we got to find a way to, we have like 28 players with us. Those guys need to train between 2 and 5 times per week in a 6-day span. How are we going to get that done? You got to get creative. All right, we have a hallway that's out, connected to that room. We'll use that hallway for like jumps and stuff like that. I've like done so many modifications on exercises based on equipment that we do and don't have, especially on the road. Like it's insane. Is it ideal? No, certainly not. If we wanted ideal, we would be at our home weight room all the time and have all the equipment that we would like all the time, but that's just not the reality, of the scenario. Like right here, we don't have even like a rack or a pull up bar. So I was literally having some guys do pull ups. We're real close to the dugouts, and on the dugouts, they obviously have a roof, and the roof is like a concrete ledge. I was literally having some guys do pull ups on the ledge of the dugout. Is that the most ideal? Certainly not, but it's a way to get some overhead pulling in, and it'll do for a week. And also, thankfully that just kind of worked out with the schedule. This is like the 5th week of our season. We're just like, all right, we know the weight room's pretty shit here. We're kind of just use this as a built-in deload and kind of get back after it in the next week. But in the meantime, you got to be able to adapt. So I think it's just as important for coaches. And that doesn't mean like you don't have to have like a shitty weight room situation to have to be able to adapt. It's, especially, in college, you might have coaches that do impromptu conditioning at the end of a practice. And then they were supposed to come in to lift. We've all been there where they come in, beat the shit, and you kind of have to change your plan within the weight room, pull back on volume, pull back on intensity, or just kind of switch your lift into more of like a movement feel good session to kind of adjust for that unexpected change in training volume. So it's super important for athletes to be able to adapt, but I think it's just as important, if not more important, for coaches to be able to adapt to, because especially like the athletes are gonna see how you react, and that's gonna probably influence how they react. So if you can't handle like a little variability and unpredictability in things that happen, that's probably going to rub off on them, and it's going to be no bueno at the end of the day.
Exactly. And the athletes will likely feed off of the energy of the coach. If you get negative every time something that is unpredictable and you're showing that, that's going to be exasperated across your entire team. And then that spreads. And we always talk every coach, whether it be a strength coach, a sports coach, whatever it is, they talk about like the locker room cancer. Don't be the locker room cancer yourself, because that's going to be really hard to undo once it occurs.
Mm-hmm.
But
I agree. Yeah. No, I think you hit it on the. I think you hit it on the head. Yeah. I mean, I think about all the time. Like, I'm a known official disliker. Like, I don't love refs, but like, I have to understand. Like, if the way that we're going to play the game or treat how the game is being officiated on, and I'm just saying this as a strength coach, so I understand it's more as a coach by my reaction to an official while not helping the team, because the team doesn't need to worry about their refs. Like that's my thing to do. I need to, but sometimes you have to adjust, and I think it's knowing your team really well, like knowing how does your team respond um, to certain body language cues or verbal cues that you give off, right? Like if I, for instance, like if we're doing a competition in the weight room and like it's an ISO competition, like if I start getting like amped up and antsy, like I can tell that they're gonna fall out way quicker than if I'm just like, hey, look, we're gonna do a 2 minute wall sit. It's be easy, no problem. I'm gonna blast the music. Just take yourself to a happy place. I'm not gonna say anything. And like they're very calm and they can do it. Um, so yeah, I agree. It's great work, Brian.
appreciate it.
Yeah. What we got a big culture guy in the room, Jake.
Yeah.
I think as much as this, like, I feel like it's like many things in any field, like there's too much of the polar opposite. Like there's either the people that think culture is everything, and there's people that think like it doesn't like matter at all. And I think every team has a culture, whether they want to like address it or not. Like every team has like certain things that they expect or don't expect, certain things that they will tolerate or won't tolerate, and that kind of at the end of the day is like the culture. What do you guys think are some of the most important things when, say you're working with your team? What are some of the most important things that you think contribute to a good culture? And this could obviously vary by the team, and it will vary by the team. Obviously, like football culture is a lot different than soccer. It's a lot different than volleyball. It's a lot different than baseball. What are some things that you think as a coach are within your control that you can contribute to enhance the culture of the team?
Well, I mean, I think being very transparent is one that I would say. Like, I think it's very. I want it to be very clear with each team what I expect of them, because it's very unfair for me to say, well, why did we do thing A when I never told you thing A was going to be something that I cared about? So, um, like, I think you have to you have to know who you are as a coach and know what your standards are going to be. Like standards, culture, I think even if you don't say culture, you would say that you want to have standards. And if you say, I think those two things can be kind of interchangeable at times, but I think being transparent, being honest, and very upfront with them. I think like for me, something I always try to do with my team, say like, hey, today's practice is going to be hard, so just know it's going to be hard. Today's weight room, like I'm going to ask you to do these things, very intent, like with a high level of intent, and then past that, like I'm not saying that I don't care, but I'm going to give you a little bit more mental freedom to like allow yourself to relax a little bit while we still get work done. And I didn't start that way. Like I started very much on a regimented thing. Like we would always say at Elon, like you can't tighten back up the reins. Like you've got to be on them early and then like it. So I think that's a big one. I would say accountability, like is something that I'm always going to preach. Like something I'll say to any of my teams is like, hey, if a teammate is asking you about like, did you fill out team builder? Shameless plug. And and you get upset about that, that's a you problem. Like, don't get mad at your teammate for holding you accountable to a standard. So I think those things, because like ultimately for me, like I think that I'm always going to believe that a player-led team is always going to have more success than just a coach-led team. But that doesn't mean that I can just say, all right, players lead, because that doesn't work. Like I have to first of all set the standards, set the culture, set the way I want things to be led, and then empower my team or the leaders on my team to want to be leaders and be willing to engage in those conversations. And so by the end, when something does have to change or something does have to be adapted, um, they're not looking solely to me to say, all right, it's going to be fine. Like they can self-organize themselves to be like, all right, this is what we got to do next. This is what we got to change. Um, you got to work harder, right? Like if a coach tells you something, it means something, but it also means more if a player tells you or a teammate says, hey, you're not where you need to be. I get it. Kind of work, figure that out. So I hope that answers your question. Just for me.
We've had this conversation probably 1,000 times amongst the three of us. I'm very big on who you recruit will dictate the culture of the team, right? And I was on a team that recruited anybody and everybody, and we didn't have a concise culture. It was very me, 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 me. I don't care about winning. And then the guys who did care about what was the betterment of the team would try to hold people accountable. And then the man at the top wasn't going to hold it accountable, right? And then as you become a coach, you start to see these things, and you're like, okay, how would I do it differently? But if you're in charge and you can bring people in, right? A lot of times in sports performance, you're not really doing the recruiting. Obviously, I'm in a little bit of a different spot, but like what you look for, like character traits and qualities that you want to bring in. Does this person, do they have the sense of like the common goal is shared with ours? Like we tell them on the recruiting visits is like our goal is to win conference every year. I want to see you meet your personal goals, but I want to win the whole thing. That's unfortunately that is the most important thing. Maybe because that's what is keeping you in your job. Number two, do you have someone who's going to do the little things, right? When they show up and you talk to them, do they, not to be that guy, but it's like, do they make eye contact? Are they easy to converse with? Those are small things that like they end up mattering, because if they're not easy to converse with and, they start to have troubles while they're here, can you have a conversation with them about it? How do they look for coaching? Ask them those kind of questions that lead them into giving you those answers. The people that you bring in will always dictate that. You can't always just go square peg round hole and then be like, I'm going to grab 50 really great athletes who don't all get along. You obviously want like diverse backgrounds of whatever it may be and different opinions so you can all grow together. But at the same time, it's like we all need to be bought in on the same common mission. I think establishing that mission is a very big deal too. Whether it be as a sport coach or as, sport or skill coach versus a sports performance coach, what is our goal here? Hey, and if it's inside the weight room, I want to help you get to your championship level goals, and I want to create the most robust athlete possible. Okay, how do I do that? you're bought in on that. I think establishing the outlines of those guidelines too, like Jake said, where it's like I need to tell you what my expectations are. Being very clear and open about it, right? Every year when my athletes get in, they get the same spiel. They get it from me and the ATs inside the weight room. Here's the rules of the AT room. This is what we expect out of you when we go to do this. Here's the rules inside the weight room, right? The rules aren't necessarily just like, hey, no phones and don't do this, no AirPods. Like those are always given. But then the other like big rules are like, I always go back to like the big three of like coaches speak and don't speak. Like that's just a basic level of respect. If they don't respect you enough not to do that, they're probably not going to respect you in a sense when you go to essentially have some kind of disciplinary conversation with them if they mess up. Number two, you got the right to fail. You don't have the right to make someone else fail. I'm okay if you have a bad day. How can you not necessarily just internalize it? I don't want you to just keep it together and then just break down at one point. But like, don't let your attitude spread. Like, have the fortitude to kind of be like, okay, this is my issue. I don't need to make it everyone else's problem as well. And if I do have that, how do I have a good discussion about that? Like, come talk to me. Like, let's talk. Let's work through this. And the last piece is like, have you tried trying? Which is it's such a gimmick kind of thing, but it's like, look, you're not supposed to be the best. If I recruited the best of the best, my job would be so much easier. But then they would probably be gone in a year because we're at a mid-major, and like they're probably going to go pro then. You know what I mean? They wouldn't be here. Our whole thing is we want to develop you. I want to make you the best you can be. So I just need you to try. I'm okay if you fail. I want to encourage failing, but what I don't want to encourage is like you not going for something in fear of it. I want you to be aggressive. If you're aggressive and you go for it and we fall flat on our face, that's great. Because that tells me that A, it's not a mindset thing, it's probably a programming deal. I'm in control of programming. I can change that to modify it to better fit the skill set to get the desired outcome. But what I can't do is like do that and then you dog it again. Because then we're just going to be in a never-ending cycle.
Yeah, I think something else that I think about too, and I don't know if I don't want to speak generally over all strength or sports performance coaches, but I think like I always try to emphasize a sense of urgency with all of my teams. Like the margins, especially now with the portal and all that stuff, are so thin to succeed at a high level that you have to have such a sense of urgency that today is going to win you a national championship, conference championship, whatever your goal is, your team goal is. Um, like in however long that might be. So, like for us, it's like, hey, what we're doing, what we did in the fall, like on like a Tuesday lift when you didn't feel like it, how you respond to that and the sense of urgency that you have is going to, I believe, is going to lead to a victory or a loss later on in the season. And like, so that's something that I'm always preaching. And I could be totally wrong. Like we could get out there and we play, the most talented team in our conference and where it doesn't really matter what we do. Or but I'd rather live on the side of, well, we're going to give ourselves the best chance if we're always constantly, just urgently, desperately scratching and clawing for every single ounce of victory or chance that we can get. So I think like I'm not going to let the standard of the weight room not reflect a sense of urgency to get better all the time, and then hopefully over time, you get you kind of teach that to your athletes, and then they think, oh well, it's not just in the weight room. It's, well, what time do I get to bed tonight? Is the 5 minutes that I stay up doom scrolling going to lose me a game later on? And you can go way too far on it, but I'm saying if we all think relatively similar in that, like we're all going to, the standard inherently is going to be raised because I'm going to handle everything as a reflection of my team.
Yeah, it definitely can't hurt, I don't think.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. Something that I think is important too is, and I'd be interested to see what you guys have to say on just like being aligned top down. Can you separate standards and culture from the coaching staff and the weight room? I think personal opinion, like the best teams are aligned from the top down, whether that's from, football team, head coach, all the assistants, strength staff, athletic trainers, everyone that's involved with the team, like you guys said, like they know like the common mission and they're aligned on what is expected and what will and won't be tolerated on a day-to-day basis, and they're all in agreement with that. I think it's really tough to separate, if one department, if the head coach doesn't really care as much about like attention to detail, if we think about like finishing through the line, everyone being on time to practice, ready to go, stuff like that, and then you try to hold them to that in the weight room, everyone being on time, everyone, if you're running like a structured warm up, like going on the whistle, this and that, it's going to be tough for them to want to buy into that if it's not a standard across the whole every domain. I don't know. Do you think you can really separate those things? I think you can try, but it's tough. I think you have to be aligned from the top down, even if it means that, one department or one part of the staff has to concede a little bit. I think it's better to concede a little bit and be in total alignment versus, holding true to what you really think, but have not everyone be on the same page. Personal opinion.
I agree. I don't know if it's like it's very difficult to do. I think that's the biggest thing, and I've really realized that stepping over to from one side to both now is that I believe it starts at the top. It really does. That will be the precedent set, and it's really hard to go a different route from the top down. And whether anyone wants to believe it or not, like we are not adjacent in the sports performance realm to the head. It is still the head, and then you're kind of at like the assistant director or at the assistant coach kind of level. And if say the head isn't very strict or like stringent on like you show up on time, we do things the right way. If it's not right, we do it again until we get it right. I'm okay spending the time on that, especially early on, to make sure that we have the intent, and then you come in and you're like, oh, that's not how I roll. I want great intent. We're going to go on the whistle. We're going to show up on time. These details matter. They kind of look at you as, the asshole, the bad guy, and you can lose buy-in, I think, from the athletes because you're the one that's essentially holding them to that standard that you may see needs to be set. But if it's not set up at the top, it makes it really hard to kind of like undo that knot and then retie it in the way that you believe it should be. So like there should be like an open discussion of like, this is what's acceptable, this is what is not. And we know that, and then we go from there. If that's not the case, then it becomes very difficult to, like I said, undo that and rewrite the route. So it's almost like, in a sense, you get to a point of like, I'm not going to be able to undo that. I have to concede. Because at the same route, like, even if it's not for the betterment of the team, which is unfortunate, you it's just a battle you're probably not likely to win. And if you're not going to win that battle and you're just constantly becoming the evil one in the sense of this, like in this hypothetical situation, like it becomes very, very difficult to get your desired outcome. But number two, it gets very difficult for you to have that trust with the athletes that you have their best intention in mind when they view the easiest route is one that people are going to take. If an athlete finds that they can cut a corner because at the top that's allowed, and then you come in and you say, I'm not allowing you to cut that corner or whatever it may be, they're just going to go, well, I don't like you anymore. They let me do that. It takes a special athlete. And again, that kind of goes back to like who you bring in is going to help dictate the culture, but it takes a special athlete to be like, no, I want to be held accountable. Just from the sake of like, that's human psychology. The easiest route is going to be the one that wants to get taken. And if that's not the case, then that's not going to be the case. I think if you're pretty aligned, I think like within 80% of alignment on a lot of stuff, that's where I would say like you're better off making the concession and just being aligned completely, even though it may not be what you desire. But if it's, hey, we have a complete misalignment and, I believe that this is the right way, and it may be, you probably aren't going to win that battle and you're just going to drive yourself crazy with that. So you almost like, in a sense, need to let go because unless that system gets revamped or redone and that stuff doesn't start at the top, it's going to be very difficult for you to enforce and uphold those standards that you believe to be true underneath that, because it's just going to keep getting unwritten and undone over and over and over again, which can be a very frustrating thing. And I think it would also increase burnout, which then leads to secondary and tertiary effects on the individual, which then bleeds onto the team. It's just so difficult. So I think like open discussions, and you see like a lot of winning programs have those standards written and enforced up at the top and then trickled down, so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's something that I've been digging in a lot more to like the West Side stuff. Not even like the programming, but just like the culture. Like if you ever
Mhm.
watched like West Side versus the World and like read about like
Great movie.
great documentary, yeah, you have to watch it. Like it's free on YouTube, no excuse. Um, we talk about like Louis Simmons, and he just had like unrelenting like standards for the gym. Like if you watch the if you watch the documentary, you'll know that he like kicked out, or like some of the strongest lifters in the gym were asked to leave or just left on their own because they weren't, meeting that cultural standard. So that's another thing that I think everyone's pretty big on, is like no special preferential treatment. Like no one's really above the law. It's better to, and I think you see this a little bit like in pro sports a little bit more. You see people like whatever off the court, off the field issues, and sometimes they're tolerated, sometimes they aren't. Like, how many, NFL, NBA players like have done, you see like, oh, like so and so did this and they're in the media, but they're still playing every night. And I get it's I don't want to assume, because I know that's a lot different. You're talking big money, you're talking like
Millions of dollars on the line when it
yeah,
comes to this.
yeah,
In a
but at the
sense,
same
does that
time
ruin
it's
the
like,
club?
yeah, like this, is it worth it to like let someone be like above the law? Because one, okay, yeah, you want your best players to be playing regardless, but one, what does that tell them? It potentially reinforces bad behavior, so they know that they can keep doing it, if not keep doing stuff that's even worse, because they know that you're not going to put your foot down. And then if you do put your foot down, well, they're going to be like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, I did this and you didn't say anything. Why now? If it's not a
Mhm.
standard, if it's not enforced 100% of the time. That's the thing I think that's like, it can be challenging. It's like you have to stay on top of that all the time, and you can't assume that like people are just going to like,
Fall in
you
line.
have to hold, yeah, you have to hold the line. And like Jake said, like he made like, you got to be upfront and transparent. To hold the line, you have to know the line, and other people have to know the line for them to be able to hold the line. But you can't hold the line after, all right, a couple of fences, I let it slide, all right, now I want to put my foot down. Doesn't really work like that. And then other players on the team, they're going to expect that if they do something like that, they're going to be able to get away with it. And then if you say like, oh, no, 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 and they're going to think, well, why am I not getting this special treatment? It's because I'm not as good as this guy. That's something that I think is very important.
On the flip side, it's almost even worse when it's not, you know, the elite player, the elite athlete who's doing this and getting away with it. Because now you look at the person who is doing everything right, and they're going, they'll subconsciously look at that and go, well, if he's getting away with that, what can I get away with? You know?
Yeah, it's like, well, why am I doing all this? Why am I doing everything the right way and like not getting rewarded? And like I'm doing all this work for nothing.
And you can just completely unravel the entire culture of a team with doing that. I think that's like the poison that can infect it's just everything.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how. I know I talked to Nick, and I know you guys still do the AED stuff with football team.
Hmm.
I like that teams have like their own system in place. I know I saw, I think it was Notre Dame football, Lauren Landau. Like they have essentially on their whiteboard, they'll have like a line on it, and that line is the standard, and you're either above the standard or below the standard, whether you adhere to all the things that encompass the standard. And say there's 10 things and you do 9 of them, you're below the standard. And if you do all, you have to adhere to all 10 to be above the standard. So I like I like when teams do things like that, because then it makes it like visible up front and you kind of know where you stand. Um, do you do anything like that with any of your teams? And then maybe if you're willing to share, like, how do you guys do that with football at Elon?
Yeah, so I'll start there. Like, so AED, attitude, effort, and I believe it's discipline. They get plus points for winning competitions and the extra stuff, right? If you do nothing wrong, but you're not doing anything exceptionally well in these in the competitions or having great grades, you'll kind of net zero. Like the standard is to be good anyway.
Hmm.
Above is going to be those plus points where when we compete, you're out there winning and or you're doing this extra or like your grades are really good. But then your negatives is showed up late. You were late to class. You were late to lift. You have bad grades. You missed body weight. You missed treatment. You did this. Like anything that isn't you holding essentially the standard of doing what is required of you, not even the extra stuff, but what is required, that gets a negative. And those they draft the teams, you know, little burp there. I think it's like 8 individuals are picked as like a group leader. They have a draft and they pick the people and the group then holds them accountable. It's like the first offense after being so much. It's some kind of individual punishment. Hey, you gotta like make sure you clean the weight room after like lift. The second offense, it's you'll be maybe withheld from something. The third offense is like the group would like essentially like go for their punishment or whatever. I'm not entirely. Thank goodness we haven't had to get to like third offenses. So I'm not entirely clear on like the inner workings of that. Um, when it comes to like my team, it's a little bit different. Like obviously, I honestly think shame is a more powerful thing than anything else. It's a hell of a drug, and like it's as simple as like when you're there, it's like you can. It's not like you're targeting anybody. It's just like, hey, these 5 people didn't fill out their team builder. Shameless plug. It's not an ad. Wish it was not an ad, but like, hey, these 5 people, why are you not filling stuff out? And then they kind of get a little red in the face. And they're like, oh, I should have did it. It's like, yeah, you should have. That's part of this. Like, they feel that little bit of like I got called out. Like, but if you're not willing to call people out, right? I'm not gonna sit there and be like, hey, you're gonna go run 2 miles for doing that. But it's like if you're constantly the person that's getting called out, you're like, because then the other people are like, come on, man, like we're wasting time on this, and you have a good culture of like the people who are trying to uphold that standard, or like they're showing up late, and you're like, why'd you show up late? Like I know your class schedule. Why is it? Why are you not here? Oh, I had this. Well, you didn't tell me about that. All right, you're gonna you miss the opportunity to practice in that sense. So like the practice is the reward because that's what gets you ready for the next event. And then they're gonna go into the event. You miss 2 practices, I might pull you from a meet. That's the thing. That's those are the things that have to happen where it's like the rule. And again, it's like the rules are set in place of like I need at least 24 hours notice unless it's an emergency of like something's going on and I expect you to call me, not shoot me a text because I want to like talk to you about this. Number one, of like, there's going to be a conflict. Let's help me organize something with you. I expect a 24-hour notice. Same thing if it's a class schedule. I want to know. I have your class schedules, thankfully, of like, okay, I know. Or if like, hey, we're doing a trip and I'm going to be gone. Can I move practice? And thankfully, we're in an individualized sport more or less, unless it's like a relay, to where like if you have to move practice, we have the option. But it's obviously like Olympic side, like you kind of get a little bit more leeway in some of these things. But it's honestly as simple as like calling it out, or like every day we run our prep, we do dribbles and we do A series, and we got build ups and stuff at the end of it as we get to it. I have zero problem. You know, there's they'll tell stories of like I had them in the weight room one day and they were doing A skips. I just had them run it. I think they ran it like 13 times, 10-meter A skips, and they're like, I'm sick of this. What's not happening? I was like, I mean, we know what's going on. Like people aren't using their arms, they're not being intentful, they're not finishing through the line. Like, after 3 or 4, I'll call the person out. It's like, why are we not doing this? Oh, I just, all right, do it again. They mess up again. Do it again. Do it again. And then you see like the captains will turn and they're like, okay, you need to figure it out, And that's when it's like, you're not a bad guy in that sense then, because you're upholding the standard of like, we are practicing with intent. This isn't an hour and a half of fucking off. We are here to get better because the mission is to get better, to win. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. We say it often, and I think you and I have had these conversations of like, being an athlete is a privilege, not a right. It's not for everybody, and that's fine. If it's not for you, it's not for you. That's cool. Let's have a conversation about it. You don't have to do this, but if you're in, you're in. This isn't a hobby, and I think that's a big thing that like, and having levity, I think like in those situations, like when you have those conversations, I think is a real thing, and being able to converse with them about that. And it's like, you need to understand that this is my livelihood that you don't care about, and you don't have to be very dramatic with it. But if it comes to that point of like, when you don't perform, they look at me as if I'm not coaching well. So every time you don't care and you don't give a shit, that reflects poorly on me. And if I can't get you on the road, on the right path, then that's a conversation we have to have. Um, we haven't had to have those conversations again, thankfully. But it's the smaller things that lead into it of like, you're going to run this right. I'm not going to quit on you. I'm not going to say get out of my face and get out of here because you can't get it. We're going to go until we get it right. And if it's one thing if you don't know how to do it and you can't fit and like you're struggling to figure it out. It's a whole nother when you're just dogging it. And that's what I don't want to coach your effort. I shouldn't have to coach your effort. We're at a high enough level that you want this. I can coach the mechanics. I can coach the technique. I shouldn't have to coach your effort.
Yeah, I love that. I think I like how you mentioned like the shame or like kind of pulling the disappointed dad type of card.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, it's one of those things where, yeah, you're gonna probably feel like shit in the moment, but at least you know where you stand and like like what you need to correct. Like, I think there's definitely a balance between like just like shitting on someone and not like telling them like this is what they need to fix and like what they need to do versus like, hey,
Yeah.
like getting on them, but like there's a nugget of truth of like, hey, like, like I think no one likes getting their ass chewed, but like at least you know where you stand and then you can actually do something about it. Like, wouldn't you rather like know that you suck and know what you can do about it versus just like you suck and like no one has the balls or like you guys don't have
To tell
have
you.
standards. Yeah, you don't have standards to tell you, and then you just go on being terrible or not being very good, and you don't even know about it. Like,
And that's like a thing too, is like you're almost like doing them a disservice. And obviously you don't want to just be a dick and like just call them out and start calling them a loser. Like that's not what we do.
no.
But like you come from like a place of understanding where it's like the other day I had one. They were talking while they're warming up, which is totally fine. You earn the right to have fun and everything like that as long as we do things correct. And it's like, you know, 10 meters of I think it was like an A switch, stopped at like 6 and walked the rest, having the conversation. And I just kind of entered in and I was like, hey, why didn't you finish through the line? Just very simply like that, like asking the question. And then you can kind of see, it wasn't even like in front of everybody. It was like just walking up to the athlete. And it was just like, you could see the look on their face of like, oh my, like I don't have an answer for that. And I was like, that's fine. Run that one again. Let's just do it again. We'll get it right. Boom. Like that's all it has to be. Like it doesn't have to be a big, blow up. Like, and when I say like shame's a hell of a drug, like you don't have to publicly shame them, but like you just talk to them and you're like that wasn't right in like a small minute detail, and that you can see like especially when they care. When they care, they're like, oh my god, what was I even doing? It's less about like, oh, this person's being a dick. They're like, I fucked that up, and it becomes really easy once the system's in place.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Like I said, everyone has a culture, like whether you want to like admit it or not. I think it's just it gets a some people give it a bad rap, and then people think that it doesn't matter at all. I
Mhm.
think and I think DeMarco wrote about this in one of his articles. Like, it's a lack of terminology with a lot of things can cause a lot of issues. Like, if you're not on, like, going back to, like, if you're not aligned, if you're not on the same page of, like, what this actually, like, means. Like, I don't think anybody's disagreeing that mental fortitude, mental toughness isn't like a necessary thing to have when playing sport or just being like a productive human. It's when it comes down to like defining what that actually means and what people mean by that and how we can actually like influence it and train it is where people get kind of stuck up.
Mhm.
So I guess, like, if you had to put a definition on it, and what would that would it be mental resilience? Would it be mental toughness? Like, what do you view as that, like, in more concrete terms? Because I think that's something that every coach can have a different definition of it, but at least like knowing what it is to you, so that you can be like, hey, like, this is what it is, this is what it's not, so it's not just some like arbitrary term. Because I think that's one of the bigger issues when it comes to, it's kind of just like a buzzword, but if there's not like a true like concrete meaning behind it, how do we, like, if we didn't have a definition for strength, how can we train strength? If we don't have a
Very true.
definition for speed, how can we train speed if we don't even know what it is? It's an elusive definition that, like, you're kind of just like throwing darts at a dartboard blindfolded.
And I think because it's not concretely defined, everyone interprets it a different way. Vague
And
questions
maybe
can
that's, yeah, and maybe that is a problem. Maybe we can't all just
like
look at it a different way. I think for like one staff, like, you should have like a agreed upon definition. Like I said, like, even if you have to kind of have to budge on what you think your definition is, as long as everyone's aligned, then you can kind of map out a path to actually try to train that and improve that. But you can't know the target. You can't like hit a target. You can't hit a moving target.
yeah. Like I would say like if I looked at, whatever we want to call it, mental toughness, fortitude, resilience, I look at it as a form of like essentially discipline. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's where I would kind of do it, and the discipline aspect of like coming in, doing the right things to uphold the standards day in and day out, regardless of how you feel about it.
Yeah, doing what
I
you're
think
supposed to do when you're supposed to do them, whether you feel like it or not.
exactly, and I think that's the big thing because motivation fades, discipline is what's going to be there when it's like you're not motivated, you know, and maybe that's like too much going on. So like I said, if I boil it down, it's like it's doing the right thing or upholding the standard that's been set when it's uncomfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it be I know I want to play video games and stay up, or I want to go hang out with my friends, but I should be sleeping because I have a big workout tomorrow, or I don't want to do this homework assignment and go to class because I'm tired, but I need to go to class because that's the standard. Whatever it is, or it's really easy to just walk through a prep, but that's not what we do here. Like those exact situations, I think those do far more for a mental toughness or a discipline aspect for the individual than if I were to just throw you into a really hard workout and start yelling and screaming and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Can we do those things day in and day out? Can you hydrate? Can you eat? Can you sleep in the appropriate ways? Do you go to class? Do you go to treatment? Are you outside of the training room, you know, when you don't need to be in there? In the sense of like I'm in there enough to get my prehab done, but I'm not getting injured because I'm taking care of myself. Do I come to practice and kind of, quote unquote, lock the gate on myself of like whatever's outside is outside for the next hour and a half, and I'm focused on what I can do here. Do I finish the reps or do I kind of dog it?
Mm-hmm.
All those, it's like, can you be detail oriented and again like uphold your standards that have been laid forth for you when it's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think knowing the standard and then upholding the standard at all times, regardless of how you feel, even when it's uncomfortable, is like a because I think the main barrier to a lot of it is just like defining what that is, and then like, okay, if a team has their standards, and everyone knows it from the head coach, all the players, all the staff. We know the standard. All right, well, we need to uphold the standard at all times, regardless of how you feel. You're held to that standard, and I think that's a pretty, like, at least a solid start to whatever mental resilience, mental toughness, whatever you want to call it. And I think the important caveat too is it's like it's something that's done every day. It's not, like we said earlier in the episode, it's not one hard week of training. It's not, a military workout. Not that those are bad, not that can't, like, contribute. Like, I do think that, like, sometimes, like, I do think that sometimes, like, you should do something very uncomfortable in training just to kind of get to that place. I don't know if it needs to be like a common occurrence, but it's something that's, like, upheld every single day. You can't just turn it on and be like, all right, let's do a super hard workout to test, mental fortitude, and then think that it's going to bleed over into everything else, because anyone can just exert a lot of effort over a short period of time and do it once. It's a lot tougher to pay attention to detail and uphold, and just, it's about being consistent. It's about knowing the standards and being consistent, day to day, I think, is what it comes down to.
I'd agree. I would definitely agree on that. Like, if we're not able to do that, we're probably not able to do the things that are larger picture, And
Mm-hmm.
it's not to be the how you do one thing is how you do everything. A lot of people are able to, you know, I guess like segregate their lives or compartmentalize.
Mm-hmm.
I totally understand that. But like in the sense here of compartmentalize what we need to get done and make sure that we are doing that consistently. Right. I think that's a big thing, is like the consistency aspect to it, where if you're not being consistent on that, you have no hope of upholding a culture or whatever it may be.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that I kind of struggle to wrap my head around, is like, you see, we've all seen it, whether we work with these people, directly, or we've just seen it through, the media. Like, people can dominate on the field and have, not great habits off the field, or like, that's the part where I think people say, like, oh, well, like, this discipline, like, this stuff doesn't really matter as much. I think it's just always probably safe to assume that, like, you're not one of those people. We're going to tend to remember the people that are the outliers rather than, like, the common folk,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of assume that you're not an outlier. And if you are, great. But what's the harm in, like, doing things the right way all the time, regardless of how you feel? There's no way that's going to come back and hurt you. You know,
I
it's like
agree.
it's like Jake said, like, the sense of urgency and, like, that, being desperate to, like, get better. Yeah, who knows if that, like, Tuesday workout in the fall 6 months before, your season actually had, a meaningful impact on, you know whether you're going to make the playoffs or not. But I think the mindset of that teaches you to take every day, and, like, take every day serious, because it's easy to get out ahead of yourself. Like, everyone wants to win a championship, but breaking that down into, okay, what can I do today to, make sure that has the highest likelihood of happening, is what really matters, like, day to day.
Exactly. I agree.
And
Didn't expect us to rip on culture for an hour and a
uh,
half, but
yeah, no, I'm cool with it.
I think we save our other topics for another show.
Yeah, I think this is the culture episode. Jake's takes makes the return.
Big time for him today. Four's up.
Yeah, yeah, four's up. Four's up. That was a really good conversation.
Let's get a review on yours. And I snuck a little review in there. I don't know if you saw it, but I did rip something that wasn't a drink.
Mm.
But let's get your review, and then
Oh, I saw. Is that a first form protein bar?
It's not a first form.
It was a protein bar of some sort.
Correct.
Yeah, so the C4 Ultimate Sour Blue Razilla, the Godzilla can. It's pretty damn good. I mean, I do like the C4 Ultimates. I think they have a pretty good formula. I do believe, I don't know if they still have the like
The tri
the
blend
tri
energy.
blend. Yeah. Yeah, if they have, this one doesn't say. Anyway, it's 300 milligrams of caffeine. It's going to be on the upper echelon of caffeine content. The price is fair, especially for the caffeine content. The can, pretty sick. I mean, I like how they did like the Godzilla theme. I like they
Yeah.
usually do kind of like a darker color for most of these Ultimate cans. The flavor's really solid. It's probably not something I'm going to go to every day. Like I said, like for me and Brian, our kind of sweet spot is usually like that 200 milligrams, ideally in a 16-ounce can. But if you really want to redline your shit and go to town, this is a good option. The flavor is really good. It's like the C4 Blue Bombsicle, but even like a little, like on steroids a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just an enhancement of that flavor, I would describe it as. I think overall, I'm going to have to go, dude, I'm going to have to go like an 8.4. An 8.4. It's really solid.
That's fair. I mean, that's a great score.
That's a really good score.
I did a little bit something different. I had, one of the newer protein bars on the market, which saw them, got a couple flavors, tested out the flavors, and immediately went and bought a box of this specific flavor because it was that good. But I have the Raw Nutrition
Ooh.
protein bar. So obviously we're mirrored on our cameras here. So what I was going to do is I'm going to throw a little share screen up so we can get an idea here. Let's see if I can share my screen. We have the Raw Dark Chocolate Cookie Butter protein bar. Now, I've had this. I've had the salted caramel. I am not a caramel fan. The salted caramel pretzel is pretty good. It's just got a lot of caramel in it. Just knowing that. The dark chocolate cookie butter, unbelievable. And this is for anyone who's looking at this. This is what the insides of the bars look. This is our dark chocolate brown or our double fudge brownie. That's the salted caramel pretzel. This is the peanut butter, and then this is the peanut butter, and then down here, that's our cookie butter. It
Those
is
like diabolical.
Unbelievable. Number one, dark chocolate use, which it's not an extremely bitter dark chocolate, but if you did milk chocolate with the cookie butter, you're probably going to be too sweet. Cookie butter in there. I think they did like a little healthy cookie butter kind of a deal. It's 20 grams of protein. Obviously, it's 12 grams of fat. You have the cookie butter in there. And come on, what are we doing? This is in lieu of a candy bar. Give me this. About 24 grams of carbs. It's only 5 grams of added sugar. It crunches like if you were going to eat cookie butter with like the Biscoff cookie like crunch in there. You have that little diabolical crunch. The protein bar itself, that like chocolate piece down there, that almost like cake cookie. It's not quite crunchy, but it's not quite. Think of it as like the edge of a brownie kind of consistency. Very, very, very good. Overall, I'm giving this at least a 9.4 on the dark chocolate cookie butter. It's that diabolical. It is so good. I'm a massive, massive fan on this to where like I said, I got it. I tried 2 flavors. I went out immediately the next day and I was like, told my girlfriend like, hey, that's the protein bar we're gonna get for a little while. We're getting this. I got a box of them. It's unbelievable. Raw Nutrition does a really great job of doing good flavors and clean ingredients. I don't know. That's how you corner a market. They do it with Bum Energy, right? They do have their stake in Bum Energy, whether anyone wants to admit it or not. Bum is pretty much a subsidiary of Raw. Raw Nutrition's creatine, their glutamine, their protein bars, unbelievable. They have amino supplements as well as like endurance supplements, electrolytes, etc. They have their pre-workouts. Their pre-workouts are great. This is not an ad, but for the love of God, I sure hope it might be sometime in the future. Unbelievable. 9.4.
Wow. I'm gonna have to get my hands on those. Did you see they have like bum pouches now
Yes,
with caffeine and
want
cognizin?
want to try those because if I could swap from a little from these bad boys over, I'll gladly do that. You know.
Damn.
Yeah.
All right, folks. Well, as always, appreciate you guys tuning in to yet another episode of Bed Boys. Remember to subscribe to the channel. If you're watching on YouTube, give us a like. If you're tuning in on Spotify, Apple Podcast, make sure to subscribe to the show, leave a review. That really does help us out, get us in the algorithm. Share with your friends if you did enjoy the show. Bevboys.tv on Instagram. Past, future, present clips of episodes. Our personal Instagrams are always associated with those if you want to check those out. Bad Boys clips as well as training content, coaching content. We're always on the move with that. Bedboys.com if you want to support the boys with some merch, hats, hoodies, t-shirts, things of that sort. And as always, we will see you next time. Peace.
Peace.